Nashville attorney John J. Hollins, who represented Jeffrey Womack, who was arrested as a suspect in the Marcia Trimble case. Charges against Jeffrey Womack were dismissed recently. We invited John Hollins to this program tonight because in our estimation we feel that he knows as much about the facts, the complexity, and all of the confusion surrounding this case that still captures the imagination of people who have heard about it as anyone I know. John, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Teddy.
Let me ask you first about Jeffrey Womack. The charges against him were dropped. Quite frankly, is there any question in your mind that there was some substance to the suspicion that Jeffrey had something to do with Marcia's death?
Teddy, there's no question in my mind at all that there was no substance whatsoever to the charges.
He was a suspect for a long time, I understand, right? From
4.5 years, yes, prior to his arrest.
He was followed by the police.
He absolutely was. Taped.
Yeah. Did he talk to you about knowing Marcia Trimble?
Jeffrey really didn't know Marcia Trimble. He just knew her as a girl who lived in the neighborhood.
Lived in the neighborhood. He took several polygraph tests, as I recall.
Took 5 altogether.
Passed them all.
Passed them all, yes.
Yeah. Do you rely on polygraph? Do you think that
yes, I do, and I think obviously that they were accurate in this case.
Why, in your estimation, do you think that the police put such emphasis on your client?
Well, Marcia came by the Womack residence late the afternoon of February the 25th, 1975, selling cookies. And Jeffrey came to the door, and Marcia asked him if he wanted to buy any cookies, and he told him he didn't have any money then, but as soon as his mother came home that he would get some money and would get the money to her and buy the cookies. He lived in the neighborhood. I guess from the police standpoint, he was as good a suspect as any.
Okay, let's go back, and later on in the program we'll get back to your client, Jeffrey Womack. Let's go back to 1975. As you know the information, you've reviewed it so many times. Do you feel that the police, at the initial bulletin that a young girl, 9-year-old, was out selling Girl Scout cookies and has not come home, did the police act responsibly from that moment on?
No, I don't think they did, Teddy. And I think the principal problem was that you had too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You had youth guidance working on the case, the patrol division, the intelligence division, and homicide was not brought in until some time later. You had literally thousands of people in the neighborhood unwittingly destroying evidence, and you just did not have the police officers with expertise on the scene when they should have been there.
Children have been missing before, John. I mean, it's not unusual for a child to be lost for a time. Why was there no concerted, orchestrated, pre-planned way of looking for a lost child? Why were there too many chiefs and not enough Indians?
Ted, it's very difficult to explain, but as you will recall, you soon had a carnival-like atmosphere develop in that neighborhood that continued for many days.
All right. Now, youth guidance was there, and,
yes.
and the Nashville Police Department?
Yes, intelligence, patrol. The FBI was called in.
If there was any physical evidence, I guess it was likely it could be stepped on. Or...
Well, I think so, and no one has ever been able to explain why the search dogs from Philadelphia, who were right at the Thorpe garage where Marcia's body was later found, didn't notice anything. And I think their handler was quoted in the news media saying perhaps it was because there had been so much activity and so many people walking through the neighborhood.
That's an interesting aspect of the case. These dogs were about the best in the world, I guess.
Yes. Even worked on the Patty Hearst case, and one of the dogs was shot in connection with the Patty Hearst investigation.
They had gone to that garage on Estes before, hadn't they?
Yes, yes. There had been other dogs. There had been dogs from the Metro Police Department, but these were special dogs from Philadelphia. They did not go in the garage, but passed within feet of it on many occasions.
As you reconstruct the events, and I want to say right off that this is not fact, this is supposition, but as you look at all the physical evidence and all the testimony, what do you think was the scenario? What were the events in order leading up to the finding of her body?
Well, Teddy, I've never thought, and my partner, Mr. Yarborough, who worked on this case with me, has never thought that Marcia was in that garage the entire time. You probably recall that Dr. Francisco testified at the hearing in juvenile court that it was his opinion that she was there. And I cross-examined him for about 2 hours, and he remained of that opinion. On the other hand, I've interviewed, and Mr. Yarborough has interviewed many witnesses who swear that they were in the garage. Some seasoned police officers, some people who were with the volunteer civil defense search team, and they can tell you the places that they searched. I think when Marcia's body was found, they found it was on top of some fertilizer sacks. These police officers even described the fertilizer sacks that they saw in there. But the most convincing witness to me was the mother of the owner of the garage where Marcia Trumbull was found. I talked to this nice lady shortly after Jeffrey's arrest. She was in the garage with her daughter-in-law Tuesday before Marcia's body was found on Easter Sunday, which I believe was March the 4th, 1975. She was looking for some flower pots. She was looking in the exact corner of the garage where Marcia's body was found. And this nice lady was afraid of snakes and rats, so she had taken a German Shepherd dog in there with her. And the dog was also with her in the corner of the garage where the child's body was found. It's just impossible for me to believe that all these people would have missed the body.
So your belief then is that someone placed the body in that garage shortly before it was found. Is that right?
That's the most reasonable thing for me to believe.
Was the body of the child in any state of decompose?
Yes, but very slight, considering the 33 days that she'd been missing.
How could that be possible?
Well, you might recall, Teddy, that Dr. Petroni, who was the Metro medical examiner at that time, was of the opinion that the child had only been dead 10 to 15 days. It was Dr. Francisco's first opinion that she'd been dead the entire 33 days. Then he later modified that to coincide more with Dr. Petroni's opinion, and then later to go back to his original opinion, the entire 33 days. As I recall his testimony in juvenile court, he felt that the temperatures inside the garage enabled the body to be preserved. He also placed great emphasis on the location of the fluids, the concentration of fluids in the child's body.
All right. But again, you feel she was not there the entire time in the garage. Do you feel she was dead the 33 days?
No, I don't.
I recall at the time there were, of course, every exotic kind, if you want to call exotic, every exotic kind of method was used in this case, from psychics to hypnotists, dogs flown in from Philadelphia that can sniff out any kind of evidence. I recall at the time there was a witness who was hypnotized.
Yes.
And in a state of hypnosis believed that she saw a figure wearing what she thought was a long brown or army green kind of coat with a child across the street shortly before Marcia went to sell the cookies.
Well, now she recalled an adult and another child with Marcia in the next door driveway before she was hypnotized. It was after she was hypnotized that she drew, or the police helped draw a picture of what she thought the adult looked like. I've interviewed that witness, and she's a key witness in the case. She's probably the last person to have seen Marcia alive. And she really doesn't believe that the diagram drawn while she was under hypnosis is of any value.
But did she see these people?
Oh yes, absolutely she did.
But the drawing is not what she saw.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
But apparently then there were two people that...
Oh yes, at 5:30.
At 5:30.
Yes.
And if there were two people an adult and a child that were with Marcia Trimble,
yes.
have they come forward?
No.
We don't know who they are.
We do not know who they are.
That's critical, isn't it?
Of course it's critical. And it leads me into something else, Teddy, that I'm constrained to say, and that is that I believe that Tom Shriver was misled by others about the evidence that the police and one of his assistants had.
Unconstrain yourself, John. Why are you led to believe this?
Well, because I believe Tom Shriver. And I know that Tom Shriver, at the time we were in juvenile court, believed that those people had been identified by the witness that we were discussing before. And that was absolutely not true.
You're saying that you think the district attorney felt that the adult and the child that we had just been talking about, that were drawn by the police artist, had been identified and they really hadn't? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that he believed that Marcia was one of the people there in the driveway next door. And I don't think there's any doubt but that she was. I think he was told that a witness said that Jeffrey Womack was also there at that time, which was a lie. He was also told that another boy who lives in the neighborhood was there, and that was a lie.
Who told him these alleged lies?
Well, I really don't know. I could speculate about it, but wouldn't like to do that.
All right, but in any way, you feel the district attorney then was misled?
I feel like absolutely he was.
And possibly that was part of the reason for his going ahead with the Jeffrey Womack event, right?
Yes, Teddy, and you have to remember now that you had a prosecutor in Tom Shriver's office who asked to take the Marcia Trimble case. A prosecutor who engineered the arrest and then resigned a little more than a week after Jeffrey Womack was arrested at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Psychics were brought into this case. From the
were.
testimony that you looked at, John, did you see any value to what any of the psychics said?
Absolutely none. You or I could speculate about it as well.
They didn't come close. I remember one psychic said that the body would be found near a line, I believe they said a gravel pit.
Another one said a mill. I think that was a psychic in Florida that said, look at an old mill. He'd had a vision, and that's where Marcia's body was.
Mm-hmm. The psychics were of no value. All the people that have traveled over that area and tramped over the area, trained civil personnel who have been trained to look for signs, they didn't find anything. The police couldn't find anything, and Marcia Trimble's body was found Easter Sunday morning. What about the neighborhood, John? What were there any events, any lifestyle, or anything going on in that neighborhood that would lead you to believe that there's information still there?
Oh, I think there is information there. We, of course, Teddy, in the course of our investigation, put the neighborhood under a microscope. Learned a lot about the residents of that neighborhood, and many suspects came out of the neighborhood. I wonder, though, if that neighborhood, as put under the microscope by us, is any different from any other middle-class neighborhood in this county.
You took an area of maybe about what, a mile?
Maybe not that wide, yeah. A couple, 3 blocks anyway.
A couple, 3 blocks, and you really studied the people that live there and what they do.
Sure.
And what they don't do, and you came up with some information that was perhaps a little on the seamy side?
A lot of drugs, a lot of sex, and a lot of suspects.
All right. And you're saying that if you take any 3 blocks in Nashville or any other city, you might come up with a similar...
Certainly might.
Might. But out of that, out of the drugs and the sex and everything else that you found in that, is there anything that would play upon the Marcia Trimble case that has not been made public so far?
Well, I think that there are some things, Teddy, but they involve other suspects, and we've given the information that we have about those suspects to General Shriver, and I think it'd be unwise for me to get into that tonight.
When the FBI came into the case, they took paint chips, I believe, off a neighbor's house that Jeffrey Womack allegedly was familiar with, a shower curtain, paint chips. I'm rambling here. I don't know all the evidence, but paint chips keep cropping up in my mind. Did the FBI and the FBI lab in Washington come up with anything to link anything to add up to 4?
Absolutely not. It was not the FBI that took the paint chips. It was Pat Apel and the Metropolitan Police officers that got the paint chips. And you might recall there were a lot of leaks to the press that I complained about. And one of the leaks to the press was either from the prosecution or from the police department that the shower curtain had been traced to Jeffrey Womack. You'll also recall, Teddy, that there were other leaks to the press that there was a lot of new evidence, and this is what had resulted in the arrest. Well, there was no new evidence, and the shower curtain, I doubt seriously it was even relevant. You will recall that all the information in the press was that the child's body was wrapped in a shower curtain or a tarpaulin. It was not. The shower curtain was not unlike any other shower curtain that was in 50 houses in the neighborhood, nor were the paint chips any different. All the FBI lab was able to say is that some paint spots on the shower curtain were similar to paint spots in other houses in the neighborhood. Obviously not the sort of evidence that you convict anyone with.
There's also a conflict about whether or not Marcia Trimble was sexually molested. Was she?
I don't know. Dr. Francisco testified when I was cross-examining him that there was a small amount of sperm found in the vaginal contents. He could not say that she was raped. He had no injuries to the vaginal area at all that you would expect to find in the rape of a small child.
Well, if there was male semen in the vaginal area, though, because she was a 9-year-old child, wouldn't that indicate that there was some form of sexual molestation?
Well, Dr. Francisco could not testify that there was any penetration. And I hesitate to get involved in this question to any great extent, but there was a good bit of testimony in juvenile court regarding children in the neighborhood and sexual activity. And I really won't go any further with that.
All right, but would it be fair of me to say then that quite possibly the sexual appearance of molestation to Marcia Trimble was not molesting her, but participating in some activity?
Well, certainly that's possible. Francisco would only say that he could not say the child was raped. He could not say that there was any penetration.
Why do you think she was killed?
I have no idea. I think her mother's been quoted as saying that it was probably accidental. And maybe it was. I saw the pictures of a body. She obviously was strangled.
Was the money, the few cents or whatever was taken from it, was that recovered?
No.
Money was not?
No, and that was one of the state's theories that robbery was the motive. I really never did think robbery was the motive. I think that whoever killed her probably took the money maybe to indicate to the police that she'd been robbed.
You mentioned a moment ago that the district attorney's office said that there was new evidence in the case.
Yes.
When Tom Shriver dismissed the charges against Jeffrey Womack, he says that he didn't see any new evidence in the case. Mm-hmm. There either was or there wasn't. I mean, this arrest of Jeffrey Womack at 2 o'clock in the morning, after 4.5 years of being under surveillance, would not have happened unless there was something new to go on. I mean, one does not need to be...
I think it did. I think there was no new evidence.
Then why was he arrested?
Well, again, I can only speculate. Ambition. John Dean called it blind ambition. Recognition. desire for publicity, pressure from the public about solving the case. I don't know what factors were involved, but those are certainly possible factors.
You know, one of the interesting parts of this, if I could make a personal observation, is that when Jeffrey Womack was arrested, after so much publicity and so much press and so much emotion over the Marcia Trimble case, I didn't sense a hue and cry to put Jeffrey Womack on the gallows when he was arrested. I sensed an amount of sympathy.
I absolutely agree with you, Teddy, and this is most unusual, as you know, in a case of major significance where you have a person arrested. It seemed to me that in this case, the public adopted a wait-and-see attitude, and I think by the time Tom Shriver did dismiss the case, that most members of the public thought Jeffrey was innocent and had been mistreated.
It was reported that Jeffrey Womack had told a friend of his that he killed Marcia Trimble.
Well, it was reported, I think, that he told 5 people.
Did he?
No.
He didn't?
No. I think that there was maybe a comment or two made in jest. The only witness that was put on at the hearing in juvenile court testified that he couldn't tell whether Jeffrey was truthful, whether he was talking in jest. And this boy's father was an attorney, and he thought so little of it that he never even mentioned it to his parents. And you got to remember, too, Teddy, that these statements, so-called statements that the police had, and they didn't take signed statements or sworn statements, which I think is significant, were obtained in 1976. And obviously, if the police department or the district attorney's office had thought they were significant, they would have arrested Jeffrey at that time.
Recently, there was a story that appeared in a suburban newspaper.
Yes.
In Nashville, bylined by Miss Amy Watson.
Yes.
Who said she knew Jeffrey Womack at the time. And in the course of that story, there wasn't a lot of new evidence, but there was a discrepancy about the time that Marcia Trimble disappeared. 5 o'clock was mentioned rather than 5:30. Mm-hmm. Does that make any difference?
Not
Obviously
really.
It does.
Not really. The police interviewed Amy, I believe her name was Norval, when this matter started. She later married George Watson, who was a reporter for the Tennessean. Police have interviewed her many times. Her stories are not always the same. After Jeffrey was arrested, I was present and interviewed her together with my partner Ed Yarborough, Tom Shriver, and Torrey Johnson. She said at that time that she couldn't remember any times, that it had been too long. But the only times that really are significant, Teddy, are the times from 5:30 on. Ms. Trimble in juvenile court testified that Marcia left her house for the last time about 5:30. The witness that we discussed earlier that saw Marcia in the driveway next door is very convincing. She had even gotten out her checkbook to write her check for the cookies. She says it was at 5:30.
Also, there were rumors about a boy being under the care of a psychiatrist.
Yes, there was one.
And that the psychiatrist, because of the privilege of psychiatrists and attorneys and ministers, would not reveal, but that the police knew that the boy had told his psychiatrist that he had done it.
Yeah, I've interviewed the boy. No, it's not true at all. The boy is a homosexual and believed that he was changing from a male into a female, and he was a suspect. But no, he didn't kill anyone. There was another one that certainly needed some psychiatric care, who had a fetish about women's clothing, little girls' clothing. But he was cleared by polygraph examination too. And that's another thing that's right interesting about this case, Teddy. All the other suspects, with the exception of a couple that they're still working on, they were all cleared by polygraphs, and Captain Brymer, who I think is is Metro's most qualified polygraph examiner, gave Jeffrey 2. How many passed both of them?
We're just about out of time. Obviously, all of the methods that have been used to apprehend the killer have not been successful. The financial rewards that have been offered have not been successful in the killer coming forward, or anybody that knows definitive information coming forward. From what you see and what you know, will the case be solved?
I rather doubt it. It's been too long.
And so the mystery goes on. 5 years later, the family of Marcia Trimble continues to put the pieces together, get their life back in order. They've done quite well at doing that. The political fallout from all of this remains an area that the press concentrates on, that various attorneys, newspaper publishers, and others concentrate on. We don't know who killed Marcia Trimble on February of 1975. Thank you, John Hollins.
Thank you, Teddy.
Thank you for watching. Good night, everyone.